the so-called culture way of investing is freehold is always a good investment. I wouldn't use that sentence as a wrong or right question. I just want to share that this is the traditional way of how investors think.
This is KS Tan. KS, thank you very much for your time. And KS, as you all would already know, you would see this box appear right below me. This is the work that KS has done on the internet. He is a real estate professional who has had tons of experience and has worked with developers and marketing analysts to provide information to the end user like you, buyers, regardless of whether you are first-timers or savvy investors. You only know what you know, but KS is here to fill you in on what you don't know. So KS, can you share with us what was your journey like as a real estate agent and then moving into can we call you property guru? Almost. Have you always seen yourself as an educator? Is that why you came into the line of seminars instead of, as opposed to being a normal agent and clocking production? Isn't that like better? Which one has more benefit monetarily or to yourself? Why did you decide to go on this line?
Sure. I think back to the question of 11 years in this industry already. The very first reason why I was even doing or stepping into this industry was the fact that it draws you the level of so-called income that you, as long as you work hard, there's no income cap. So that was the very first reason why I was even drawn into it, and hence, so to speak, production and monetary so-called reward or remuneration is definitely something that was after. But through it, probably about a good 8-9 years after doing numbers after numbers, month after month, you then reach a certain level of so-called lethargicness of are you going to be in this so-called rat race forever? It itself is a rat race because how different agencies actually put their so-called performing agents on the pedestal on a month-to-month basis. You would know that you are being recognized given what you have done in terms of production. It's not by way of services. I've not really seen a company, being an agency, actually mention a lot of so-called credential for people who have done tremendous services to their client. It's never about the service, it's always about the production. So, and of course, in that journey of 8-9 years before I decided to then go on to this webinar thing that I'm doing today, I think what we wanted to do was always production, always money, and money itself means what? It means closing more deals. It's not about service, it's not about how many people have you helped, right? So in that instance, definitely we do a lot more so-called sales speech that is trying to get someone to buy something, and that itself you will probably, at the end of it, what are you trying to get out of this so-called pursuit? I felt that pursuit itself actually made me pocket deep but spirit and soul weak. So why I say that? Because it becomes meaningless. I actually just want to close deal. I could have done or said things that would have actually changed the trajectory of someone's life because I want them to buy something and I'll make the money. But not knowing that this will actually make someone's life harder to live by because they make a wrong investment decision. Yeah, and that itself is something to really reflect through the years because I did some soul searching along the way when I felt that this was not correct. Yeah, and of course when in a way at first of a realtor journey, I would think that first thing first, when you are first in this industry, first thing you look at is probably production. After production, then next thing you look at is how can you grow, and the next thing to grow is of course either recruitment or you take on the new role. So for me, what I did was I did both at the same time, and that's where I was able to then hold a team size of not big back then, it's about 20 over people.
This big man.
Yeah. And thank you for that. Then what happened was that also lead me to my next so-called promotion. So I then be promoted to the what I did was I managed to be the top performing agent for that entire year of 1-2 to 1-3.
And that was in which agency?
That was in KF Property, which is Knight Frank.
Okay.
So that itself actually brought me to my next level, which is being a product ambassador. That's where I work very closely with developers, and where I got to do pricing analysis with them, marketing with them also to know how are we going to launch this product in phases or not, depending on the size of development, etc. And I was doing that for the entire year without doing production. So my production was actually very, very bad. But with that in mind, I grew tremendously, because that one whole year was when you talk about someone going to a monastery to become a monk, right? This is my monk journey. In fact, I just there to really know how the top-down things. We are basically at the receiving end of how the top actually, or the stakeholders project the market to be. That's why I think that understanding how the mindset of these developer are thinking, or how they price their product, and of course how they launch it, is very important, because we are the receiving end, and that will then give us the projection of how the market is going to look like in so-called the next 3 to 5 years or even 7 years down the road. Yeah.
And so for the benefit of people who are not familiar with this term, product ambassador, is the guy, if you go to a show flat and listen to any of the agencies speak about the product, he's the guy. This is very good insight, because if you know how the developer thinks, then you will also you need people like this to advise them on what to price it at. So the insights that they can give you, guys like that, they can give you, you could say priceless. So as a product ambassador, when you were so tightly knit with, can you name a few developers that you were working with, or is it like a bit sensitive?
Sensitive.
Okay. When you were with a developer, did they pay you a monthly salary for what you were doing? What kind of work did you have to take on? Was it more senang, or was it less senang than when you are doing your own production as an agent?
Sure. Okay. So we are all self-employed, so to speak. So we don't get a salary. Okay. So with that, what is the role? What's the new role of this project ambassador? First thing first, we got to work with the developer very closely to get all the A&P, which is the advertising and promotion things up in terms of understanding their price tag, and how we're going to roll it out from time to time before the show flat is open, to finally where viewers are able to go to see the show flat, so to speak. So that is just one portion of it. But how am I being paid, and how was the remuneration looks like? I just be very transparent here. Basically, when you are at this role, you no longer takes individual deal commission. So what we hit is based on KPI. So if the company hits a certain level of sales on the launch day itself, we get a small cut of it. Alright, and depending on the agency size they are in, it will then create that level of volume, which then also then translate to how much so-called that small cut of that size you're looking at. So back then I was in, like I mentioned, Night Fright. So size wasn't a big company, so that itself didn't really able to fit that kind of so-called production I used to be doing. But that beside the point, I guess is a very good learning journey, because it allows you to really think ahead of think 10 times, or at least 3 times ahead of what people are thinking in terms of making investment, because you know the roadmap, and of course all the stakeholders are involved, what their mindset are like, and that actually translates to the next thing of who are beyond the stakeholder, which is the developer, right? So beyond that, that's where this webinar was formed, and that's where we talk about the so-called urban transformation. That is mainly the topic of what I touched on the webinar.
And a first timer look for you, or is it just savvy investors who have like a large portfolio? Or
sure. Okay, so this masterclass itself doesn't discriminate anyone, right? In fact, it's really an eye-opener of reframing how the cultured investor purchased property in the good old days. So one of the so-called cultured way of investing is freehold is always a good investment. I wouldn't use that sentence as a wrong or right question. I just want to share that this is the traditional way of how investors think, because you can hold on to it forever. It means that it must be something good, because good things last forever, right? So with that, a lot of people do not know what does this so-called freehold properties comes with in terms of as a product attribute. So I will cover a lot of it in the webinar itself, and then you can then dictate yourself or take notes from there whether this is actually something good or not good. because different people have different perspective and different people buy things because of different intention. So this masterclass is solely for you to understand the fundamentals of investment on the new age of where Singapore is actually continuing progressively actually increase in population, of course in wage as well, and also in terms of the urbanization of the country, so to speak. Yeah. So with all these things coming together as one, I think it's very different from how we were in emerging markets back then to how we have become a first world capital city today. So the investment fundamentals has definitely need to grow and need to change. So that is what I am bringing on the table to share with you everyone what they need to look out for given the new way of investing. I bought like overseas property. I also have bought, of course, my investment property, which I use it for stay as well. Okay, and why do I make those choices along the way? Is it because I really want to test it out and see my theory really works? That's one of the main reason actually. But of course, beyond that, what is so much more important to me is that what triggered me to make those decisions, and that is something that I wanted to know every single buyer at that level. If I were to work with them, to know what is that compelling reason, understanding that reason and the purpose, right? And of course, we then can ask the right question to then finally understand how the goal or the target board looks like. Because the target board itself is basically a reason why you want to do it. Alright, and my job here is basically the guide holding your hand to that eventual goal by going through the fastest way and the best way to get there. Yeah. I think what a lot of people miss out on is being just a facilitator. If you're a salesman, it's like, okay, what do you want? Okay, you want 5 beta. What size do you need? Which location do you need? Do you need unblocked view near MRT? Things like that. I call this being a facilitator because you're asking questions based on need. But what if you are coming from a place of why do you want this? But would a client even want to tell you that because they barely know you? And I think that you need to be able to create value and service, and that's where people trust you with those deep insights that they have or deep reason that they have that's rooted inside them why they are doing certain things they are doing today. And once you are able to re-engineer this thing to know that compelling reason, you are then able to find the right product that gives you the level of so-called trajectory that the investor or the home buyers is looking at. I think that is so important.
So what you're saying is, in a nutshell, what he has just shared with us is what we know in the industry as order taker. I want in this location, I want near MRT, I want near hawker center, my budget is this, you go and find. So basically order taker asks what you want to buy, what is your price tag, I go and find. So that's typically, your approach is different in that you ask why. You ask why, then you can ascertain the what. Essentially, he is representing you. He's representing the buyer, the person who has come and signed up for his course. So if we are talking about being on the right side of the fence, if you were to imagine an imaginary line, KS is on the side of whoever signs up for his course. If I'm the sales agent today, I'm on the side of the fence of whoever is paying me to sell his house. So it's a very, very different ballgame. So what KS is saying here is he's on your line. So if you sign up, he's going to give you his opinion and all his years of experience on equipping you with what you should be doing and more importantly, the why.